All right, I'm having technical difficulties, so I am here, but I'm here.
All right, I was having some also. I just got in myself. I see Danielle, Molly, Mr. Franklin, are you
Yep,
here?
he's there.
All right.
Okay,
Larry. All right, Mr. Franklin, I think everybody is back. If you want to bring us back into open session.
okay, and we are reconvening into open session. The first item then on the agenda is item number E, a consent motion for approval of items F, G, and H, which is agenda approval, minutes of June 17th and July 1st meeting, and accounts payable. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, then all in favor, I will start on my screen from left to right. Danielle Bailey
Aye.
and Molly Krachowiak.
Aye.
And where'd Tamika go? Tamika, are you here? Yeah. All right, I vote aye, motion carries. All right, then I think that we go straight to district reports
To the
then.
district reports, and I'm gonna have our second report go first and then do the district reports about updating and the reopening schools. Figuring that we'd have a lot of participants and looking at the participants, we're up to 122. Mr. Franklin and I actually amended the agenda so that after our report or my report, and Jenica Westfall is helping me with the report today about reopening schools, then we go right to visitor participation so that our visitors can ask us questions about what I just or what we just reported on, instead of having to wait to the very end of the meeting. So we'll do that right off the bat. But before we do this, by state law, Dr. Kilton or somebody in the district has to give a seclusion and restraint report for the last school year. So we're going to start with that, and then we'll do the reopening report. So Dr. Kilton.
All right, hi, everybody. I think the board, I think you have this in your packet as far as the data that was shared showing the seclusion and restraint definitions from the school board and state law regarding seclusion, restraint, and then seclusion and restraint combined. So each year in July, we do this report. And if you'll notice on your page, there were 3 incidents documented during the 2019-2020 school year. Those incidents, 2 of them were restraints and 1 incident where seclusion and restraint were both documented. The demographics of the students are described below. There were 2 male students involved in seclusion and restraint and 1 female student. 1 student, I added this, so this isn't on your sheet, but 1 student identifies as African American. 1 student identifies as 2 or more races. 1 student identifies as white. 2 of the students that are documented for seclusion and restraint are in special education. The other student was referred for special education. All 3 students have documented behavior plans, and all 3 students are Parkway students. So you'll notice at the bottom of your sheet, the past data, which I wish Teresa was here because Teresa is always the one that asks me the trend from year to year. But you'll notice this past school year, we have documented 3 incidents of seclusion and restraint. Clearly, we also have had about 3 months less of school. But I also would like to just attribute some of this lower incident rate to the work that we've been doing, especially at Parkway, around not secluding and restraining students, rather focusing on learning how to work with students with challenging behaviors. I'm going to show a book here, Lost at School by Ross Green. The last 2 years since I've been in this role, we have done extensive training to the staff at Parkway, both teaching staff, special ed, and regular ed staff. Both administrators and paraprofessionals in the district have participated in this training, talking all about students with challenging behaviors and how kids do well if they can, and that behavior is communication, and that is our job as educators to really learn about behaviors and how we can best support students and staff through challenging behaviors. So my goal as we chart this data from year to year, and this is kind of an unfair year with the 3 months of lost schooling, but is that we will no longer need to use seclusion and restraint. Instead, we will learn how to effectively work with students with challenging behaviors. That work also did begin briefly at Glen Hills, but again, because of the closure, we did get some of that training got abrupted. So any questions?
I do, Shannon.
Yes.
So anytime there's restraint and seclusion, it's reviewed by the schools, right? And the parents are notified?
Correct. The
Okay.
policy, I can get you the full policy, but obviously you know what
I've seen it. I think so the parents have an opportunity, like, I guess I'm just wondering if the school then said these were appropriate uses, there were really no issues from the family's perspective or the school's perspective in these 3 incidents.
Each time there is an incident, any type of behavior, oftentimes not even seclusion or restraint, the school personnel is going to reach out to parents and staff to make sure that they know what's going on and how they can support the student and the school and to improve behaviors. I've changed over the years to using a Google form to collect the data so that immediately following an incident, there is a debriefing. Whoever was the person that was the main adult involved with the seclusion or restraint fills out the form, tells exactly what happened. Was it seclusion or restraint? How was the parent contacted? And the parent needs to be contacted within 24 hours of the seclusion or restraint. So that is pretty prescribed and documented in a Google form.
Shannon, quick question for you, and I think this is a question that all special ed's facing, but in our case, when we need to do something to seclude or restrain someone, how is the forthcoming year going to impact that with COVID-19 restrictions and whatnot? Are we going to have, how do we keep people separate? Is there any health concern, with respect to where people are put or how they're, handled? What kind of thoughts going into that for the upcoming year?
That's a great question. I think that's pretty much true for everything, because if you spent any time at Parkway, little children are going to want to hug the adults and they're going to want to hug their friends. So social distancing for little children is, as well as having to seclude or restrain a child that may be out of control with their behaviors is going to be something we will have to address. Obviously wearing masks or whatever, which Jenica and Larry's presentation moving into the next section on the agenda, we'll probably talk more about that. But either way, if we're in person with students and staff, it is our job to make sure that all the students and staff are safe. So we will have to take that into account, but do our best.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into the next one. And again, and Shannon, I know you've talked about this in the past, seclusion and restraint are legal terms. And so basically they are a last option at all times. To go into a secluded area with a student or a restraint is a last resort. And again, some people, I think, just for clarification, having a timeout is not seclusion. And, putting your arm around a child and helping them walk down the hallway because they just need a little bit of guidance is not a restraint. So, and we are going to talk about that right now, Mr. Franklin. I think that's a good segue into the reopening of schools. And now we're going to try to be really fancy because Shannon's going to share her screen, which is a Google Doc presentation. And Jenica and I are going to try to be able to scroll at the same time and basically, so I hope this works. It did when we practiced it, so.
All right, well, here we go. All right, can I get a thumbs up if the screen is showing?
The screen is showing to me right now, so that's good.
Okay.
So go right ahead to the next, it just says thank you. I wanted to say thank you to not only my staff for helping put this together, and Jenica is going to be a big part of this presentation, but we had 531 responses to our parent survey, and we had over 100 responses to our staff survey. And having that information really helps us to move forward. So I do want to say thanks. Go right ahead, Shannon. And then before we start, because I know that educators, we use all sorts of terms and we confuse the public quite a bit. So I wanted to make sure that as I say things, we understand what they mean. So the instructional delivery modes, and so when we talk about what's a traditional educational mode, that's when I say traditional, I mean face-to-face with all students for full days. If you hear people talk about a blended mode, when we talk about a blended mode, we're talking that some students are virtual either part of the day or all day. We have modified group sizes, we have settings and or start times that changes, end times that might change for some students. So that's a blended, it's not the same for all kids. And intermittent means, and I wouldn't be shocked if this happens, that we might have to close school for 2 weeks. And it's a timely responsive short-term school closure with virtual learning, but it isn't considered, it should not be long-term. And then full virtual is that students choose, or like what just happened with COVID for 3 months, that all students are at home learning. Go ahead, Shannon. Or next screen. So for the past, well, since probably May, I've been meeting with our district, or other district superintendents from Port Washington through Shorewood. And we came up with guiding principles and beliefs on school reopening that we believe should be taken, and we are all committed to this as district administrators. I'll read them very quickly. This presentation will be placed on our website if you want to go back and take a look. But basically, we've all agreed that in-person learning is ideal. However, if it's not possible, we will provide a stable platform for all students, which means that we will make sure in the entire North Shore that all families have what they needed if they are not able to be in school. We will take, to the best of our ability, mitigating safety risk for our staff and students in all school settings, that district resources have to be allocated and or reallocated to fund the necessary equipment, services, and personnel, and that we will make sure that we have a device in every home with internet access for those who need it. These are just, again, we ended up with 11 guiding principles, including the first one, which was the definition of terms. So then 10 more guiding principles that we need, and we know that student training and family support must align with the instructional delivery modalities, which means that if you are at home in a virtual setting, we have to be able to make sure that your student and that the family understands what is necessary to make that happen. I think we've learned a lot from March 13th through the end of the year. I think some students adapted to virtual learning wonderfully, and some students didn't. Some families were able to do it and some families weren't. And so what our job is to make sure that all children and all families are able to do what's necessary if they must be home from a virtual standpoint. We also know that from our district and the administration team, we have to get our teachers ready and be able to shift in and out of instructional modes based on safety. If a pandemic or if the COVID-19 virus skyrockets in Glendale and we have to shut down schools, we have to be able to shift in and out of that and not take as much time as we did in March. The district will seek ongoing guidance from local, state, and federal agencies. I'm going to talk more specifically about that when I come back onto the screen. But right now, I believe the next slide is going to get us into Jenica.
Hello, everyone. It should be, I'm going to be presenting on the survey results for the parents and family survey that was sent out on July 7th. And I just wanted, before I start, I just wanted to say that share the purpose of the survey. And really, as a district, we truly want to get an increased understanding of perspectives, get everyone's valuable feedback, And then we also wanted to serve as a temperature check. So what are we feeling right now? And then we also want to gather this information so that we can use it for our planning teams. Jen, you can go on. So the slide you're viewing right now is, Larry previously mentioned this, we had 531 respondents for the parent survey. So you can kind of see across here, we had a really great showing across all grade levels. So we're very pleased with the response rate. Next one. This was the race and ethnicity for the survey. And this we found was consistent with our district demographics. So we felt that we had a nice sampling of families. And this kind of digs into the data of how families are feeling their comfort level of returning back to school in the school building this fall. So the blue is the very comfortable. You can kind of see their percentages there. Red is somewhat comfortable. The orangish color is somewhat uncomfortable, and the green is not at all comfortable. When looking at adding like very comfortable and somewhat comfortable together, we have 55.4% of respondents were feeling very comfortable or somewhat comfortable about returning to the school building, while 44.6% of respondents felt not comfortable or somewhat not comfortable. Okay. This is talking about the instructional models. So there were several options for people to consider if they would consider or if they would not consider. So in the bar graph, the blue is the would consider and the red is the not consider. The numbers listed in the bars are the total number of respondents. So looking at the first one, the first instructional model was all students would be in school with no virtual option. The second one, going horizontally across, is all students in school with a virtual option. The next one was no K4 with a K5 through 6th grade face-to-face and 7th and 8th grade going virtual. The next one is all virtual, which you can read there. The other one was that late afternoon option. Then we also had an A-B schedule. And then finally the every other week. So when looking at this, the majority of the families would consider a face-to-face learning environment, followed by some of the blended options, and finally the full virtual. Shannon, can you go to the next one? All right, so we kind of dug into some of the precautions. We noticed in the survey that general safety is an absolute concern for all families, and that's something that we really need to make sure we're taking care of it as a district. But we kind of really selected this piece, the masks for staff and students. So when looking at this, when you look at the columns for very important, families believe that it is very important for staff and for students to have masks. So the majority have that strong belief. This is something else that is really going to help us with our planning moving forward, is looking at transportation needs. So on this graph, you can see, and again, this is a temperature check, and we'll need to, do some follow-up surveys to get more information. But 50% of our families stated that they would not need transportation, which would help us with some social distancing on buses and to help keep kids safe. Okay. So we also asked in the survey some questions around virtual learning, and then what we should focus on if we had to go back to virtual learning. So you can kind of see across, the blue is the most important. So, I mean, it was found that it's absolutely need consistent communication. Families need schedules and easy access to that schedule. We need to have it as traditional-like as possible with live lessons, and then also just increasing that interaction with students and students with teachers. What we found that, according to the survey, that was not a high priority was the help with technology. I think people are feeling pretty good about that. Okay. And then this will also help us with our planning and, looking forward to the upcoming school year. We had 40% of our respondents, according to the technology piece, that would need a school device to support online learning. And then we do have several families who may need support with internet.
Jenica, could you just pull back? I wanted to go back one slide right there. I don't have an internet connection. It's only 3 people who responded that don't have an internet connection at all.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks. I just want to make sure I knew what numbers were.
Yeah, and I think we would, we will do more surveys. This is not a one and done. So again, it's a temperature check. So we would, we did not collect names or anything like that on this survey. It was, the purpose again was just to kind of get a feeling of where we're sitting, so we can start the planning process, and then we'll have to get more specific information moving forward.
Do we know?
Oh, sorry.
Whoever wants to go, I don't.
Do
Danielle.
we know how many students are sort of being represented by 530 responses from adults? Could we tell by if they listed multiple grades, or do we have some sense of what portion of our student population is actually being represented in these results?
In the technology results?
No, so we have 530 responses, right? Do we know that's at least 530 students, but could we tell, do we have a better idea of how many students?
If you went, I'm sorry to interrupt. If you go back to, I believe it's one of the first slides, we did it by grade level. So you could
Yeah, that's
see,
what I'm wondering if that tells us.
yeah.
Slide 8.
Okay. Are we going to get a copy of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then also you can kind of see demographics too.
Sure.
Following one. And I can break it out further. I did do some breakout of this that I can, pull up later, but it wasn't specifically on the technology piece.
No. Okay. Thanks.
Danielle, this is Shannon. I'm sorry to pipe in here, but when all the full detail that I sent the board earlier this week, if you look at that chart, you would be able to tell parents that responded to more than one grade level. So if I'm a parent and I clicked on, I have a K4 student and a 6th grade student, that shows up in that detailed spreadsheet that you have there, that you would be able to see individuals that picked more than one grade level. So you'd be able to see the families that have multiple kids.
Okay.
And just to jump in, and Angela, thanks for noticing that. I'm going to talk about the chat box at the bottom. Obviously, it's very difficult to say you don't have internet connection on a survey if you don't have internet connection. We do understand it. So when Andy said there's only 3 people without internet connection, my guess is that's probably truer for more than just 3 within the district. But I appreciate your comment.
Well, and my only other thing was I'm just worried about how they did last spring or what's going to happen, this year. But
Andy, this is Shannon again. We did help with Jim Beckman and Larry did get hotspots for families, and I did deliver a handful of them out, but they're the teachers that reached out and the administrators that reached out to families that said that they didn't have Wi-Fi, we did deliver hotspots to them, and there weren't a lot that were delivered.
Correct.
thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. So then we also, on July 2nd, we sent out a survey for staff to get their feedback. And again, this is a temperature check to see, how everyone's feeling, just to really get input from our staff, and then understand perspectives. And again, gathering that information for planning moving forward. We can go to the next one. So a little overview on this staff survey. We had 107 staff members who completed the survey. You can see that 49% was Parkway, 37.5% were Glen Hills staff, and 13.1% who filled out the survey work in both buildings. So looking at the staff results, this is the same question that was asked in the parent survey, the parent family survey. And you can kind of see the data here. It looks a little different. So again, it's the same: blue, very comfortable; red, mostly comfortable; orangish, somewhat comfortable; and then the green, not comfortable at all. The difference is that for the very comfortable, mostly comfortable, it was 42.4%. So, and then 57.6% for the somewhat comfortable and not comfortable at all. So it almost was like a flip from the parent survey. We can move on to the next one. And then again, instructional models. Looking at that, we surveyed staff, asking them what they would consider and what they would not consider. And more than half of those staff members who responded would consider all options. So they're definitely willing to try anything. The only option that was not something that a lot of people would consider was that evening option. And that was also consistent with the family survey as well. You can move on to the mass. This is really consistent with the parent survey as well. Just the importance, 69.16% for staff wearing masks, and then 57% for students wearing masks. So, you know, staff believes it's important. All right, does anybody have any questions in regards to the data?
Well, I am just following along with some of the chat, so I'm sure a lot of other people are, so maybe just to say a couple things out loud. I appreciate Larry chiming in on this. One, all the staff, certified teachers, paras, everyone had an opportunity to respond to the survey. And so we had high return based on everyone who works in the district, right?
Yeah, and actually, John, thanks for your, we did make a change after we sent out the survey to staff. We kind of, and not meaningly, we said completely, mostly, somewhat comfortable. And we got feedback saying, you know, it was either you're not comfortable, but what about somewhat uncomfortable? So we made that change for the parents to say very comfortable, somewhat, and then somewhat uncomfortable. So the staff's going to get another survey tomorrow, John. So talking about kind of the reopening piece, but thanks for noticing that. So.
Yeah.
And then this one, the next slide is my slide that says after reviewing. So we've sat down and as an administrative team and really dug into the data. And first of all, I do think what came across loud and clear is that the majority of our parents really want kids in school, but we also have to have an option, a parental choice for online learning for those kids who are either uncomfortable coming to school, their parents are uncomfortable having them come to school, they have an underlying condition either as a student or as a family member. And my guess it's probably going to be close to 80 to 100 students in our district will need a virtual option when we will have to set that up. And we will make that an option to families. Also on Tuesday, I was at an SWSA virtual meeting. We had Children's Hospital, their expertise coming in and talking to us and giving us advice about reopening schools if and how to do it. And they started with this caveat that, you know, Tuesday was yesterday, July 14th. And they made very clear that this is their best advice on July 14th, knowing that things could change. But they really came across loud and clear to the SWSA that they believe very, very few, if any, younger children have COVID or spread COVID. For whatever reason, they don't know why, but currently that's their belief. And so with that, I've kind of altered my, 2 weeks ago, I gave if I had to open schools tomorrow, this would be my recommendation. That included having 7th and 8th grade go virtual, not having 4K, and then doing small groups of 15 or less and spreading them out throughout the building. Since that time, and by looking at the survey and getting, having discussions with other area superintendents and with Children's Hospital, and again, I use the caveat that we don't have to start school tomorrow, and we're going to talk about getting community and staff input after I'm done doing this. But if I had to make a decision today, my recommendation would be that 4K through 5th grade would be in school, in person, in school, pretty regular in school. I think we'd have to make some accommodations. For example, if you are a 2nd grade teacher, you have your class and it's time for art, the art teacher would probably come into your classroom, or the music teacher would come into your classroom instead of walking through the building. We can make those sort of accommodations, but we would really, again, after the advice from Children's Hospital and from others, that I believe right now, today, that 4K through 5th grade could be in person. For 6th through 8th grade, we know that being in person with teachers is important. So if I had to start school tomorrow, my recommendation would be that we would split the class into morning and afternoon. And by what I mean by that, if you are a morning student in school, you would get your core academics. You would have English language arts, math, science, and social studies in person. My guess is the students would be cohorted again as a group, and the teachers would rotate. The afternoon for that group, they would go home either by bus or by pickup, and they would have their allied arts, their band, foreign language, art, tech ed, depending on what their schedule is. That would be virtually. And then the other half of the group would do the allied arts in the morning and come in for in-person for their core curriculars of math, science, social studies, and language arts. Again, that's my best recommendation for today. And then with knowing that we're going to talk about, and go to the next slide, please, is we need, obviously, I'm not the only person who gets to make this decision. So what I'm recommending to the board is that the board is really the reopening advisory committee. In the end, I'm going to make a recommendation to the school board, and the school board is going to say, yes, this is what we are going to do. Board members, you've been elected to make that decision. You've hired me to make that recommendation. We will take a lot of input from parents and from teachers and from staff members, but in the end, my job is to make the recommendation to the board, and the board's job is to accept the recommendation or tell me to go back to, make tweaks to that recommendation. So in the end, and I'm hoping that by August 5th, we can have this out to the community. Again, our charge is to ensure that we provide safe and equitable schooling for all students, that we pay particular attention to those most vulnerable, that we need to promote wellness and safety for all. And again, that's what I started with. I do believe that there are students who will not be able to come to school physically, that we will have to provide a virtual option for. Next screen, please. So with that said, my recommendation to the board was that we would, and by the way, thank you to the parents. We had over 100 parents say that they would like to participate in this advisory opening committee. And so what you're going to get tomorrow, parents, is a very specific point that if you still want to do this, and we're going to go through it right now, we want you to sign up and be part of this. But I really see that we have 3 major silos that we have to have a good understanding for to reopen school. That we have to have an instructional working group, which means that we have to be able to go in between, as we said earlier, that from a virtual setting to an in-person setting, what does, for example, we just talked about 6th, 7th, and 8th, if they are at home for a virtual FIAD lesson, what does that mean? We have to train our FIAD teachers to be able to do that. We have to be able to train our art teachers to be able to give lessons virtually. And for kids who are completely virtual, what does that mean? And then also for the kids who are here, it's not going to look the same. So that's the instructional working group. We also know that this has been very taxing on our families and on our students and on our staff. We're living in a time that's very scary right now. And so a social emotional working group of really working proactively to plan and ensuring successful engagement. We need to make sure, last year we ended the year with 1,081 students. I don't know exactly how many students that we will start with, but we have to make sure that every student is engaged and being successful at school. And that also means that we have to help their families and we have to help our own staff. And so that's the social emotional working group working together to come back and give recommendations to the board and the administration. And then lastly, I called it a health and safety working group. That's the nuts and bolts. That what safety protocols do we need in the buildings? Do we mandate that masks be worn? And do we have masks or safety shields? How do we move from one area, if I'm talking here at Glen Hills, how do fourth graders get down to, if we have outside FIAD for them, how do they get outside and how do they come into the building? So that the really nuts and bolts, that's the health and safety working group. Next slide. So with that, I kind of mentioned a couple of times is that tomorrow morning, staff, you will be sent a survey asking if you are interested in helping. Parents, you will also be sent a survey. And in that survey, it's very specific. It talks about specific times that we will be meeting. And we will give a virtual option to meet, but we really are encouraging people to meet in person for these committees with social distancing, with masks. And then having your input taken to the board on July 28th. So the work will happen next week. So if you're out of town next week and you want to help, unfortunately, it's not going to work for you. But we have 3 working meetings for each group next week at different times. And then we would come back to the board with just our information on July 28th. We have a final meeting for each committee on July 30th to review and make final recommendations to come back to the board on August 5th. So that survey is going out tomorrow, and if you are interested and able, please sign up and we will make sure that you are part of our committee. Next. So, well, there you go. That's the July 28th and August 5th are the next 2 board meetings. July 28th is a Tuesday. We normally meet on Wednesdays. I apologize, but I happen to be out of town on July 29th. And so I asked the board to move it to July 28th, and which is a Tuesday. August 5th is the regularly scheduled board meeting, first board meeting in August. So with that, thank you. And we'll open up, first we're open up to questions from the board. I'm seeing chats. As I was going, I wasn't looking at the chats. I'll start looking at them, but questions from the board.
Can I just, this is Shannon, sorry. I would like to unshare my screen unless the board needs me to refer back to a slide in question. Otherwise, I'll unshare my screen so that people can go back to looking at the board members that are speaking.
I do have one quick question, Shannon, before you do turn it off. And I don't think that's in the data, or it's in the slide, but it's a question about the data. We're talking about the fact that people seem to be slightly more of a majority of being open to some form of it, of the school being open. Do we have any breakdown of, how many people are in favor of the school being open to some degree versus what the specific option is?
Are you referring to staff or to parents?
To parents. So in other words, parents say they'd be willing to consider 4 to 5 days of school a week. You know, and I'm just curious.
It could be guardians. It could be guardians or other people who've responded to this survey. I think that was pointed out in the chat too. So to keep referring to them as parents, we call them respondents, I think.
I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, how do we know that the people who are in favor of, you know, opening to some degree or comfortable to some degree with opening school, how do we know that, you know, do we know if they support, if each of those groups overwhelmingly support one of these options on this page? So in other words, you have 4 groups of people, right? Very comfortable, somewhat uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. You know, can you take the data that is in this slide and tell us how many people in each of those, you know, 4 groups support each of those options?
So I will take this question, but again, Andy, if that spreadsheet that I shared with you, I know that it's very challenging to navigate, which is why we put it in a chart, but I can dig into that Excel spreadsheet and drill down on that a little bit. Obviously, I can't do it right this minute, that you would be able to see, as a parent, what I would imagine that many parents probably clicked multiple things that they would consider. The popular one is obviously that all students come to school with virtual options available, as this second column right here indicates that most would consider this. These 92 people probably are the people that don't want to come at all or want their children in school whatsoever. But we can drill further into that data using that spreadsheet. It just doesn't come out in the chart with as many details as you'd like, probably.
And the other thing is, since we're talking about taking K4 to 5th grade and treating it one way versus 6 to 8, it would be nice if we could follow up and get a breakdown of, you know, the preference, you know, of modality based on, you know, those grades. Because if we're going to affect people, you know, it's not just this generalized feeling, right, of, you know, who's in favor of an option. 100 of us are in favor of one option, 100 of us are in favor of another. I mean, we should also have some idea of that particularized data for the groups that are being affected. You know,
Yep,
do or want to be all in school? That's what I'm saying.
Yep, Jenica dug into those data points a little bit more than myself and Larry, but looked at like specific K4 parents. Obviously, if I'm a K4 parent and you're telling me you're going to cancel K4, I'm not going to be in favor of that option. And 7th and 8th grade parents that perhaps wanted in-person schooling. So you can separate that out by grade level and by response.
It's just helpful data, because if we're going to do something that treats those grades differently, you know, we should know, we should have that, you know, at our hands, however it gets decided. So I'll follow up offline, but, you know, thanks.
I know Larry mentioned this already, but I would imagine that after this is all the work groups that meet next week and we refine the whole plan, that another survey would go out to get more information on which parents would be attending if we offered this and which parents would be virtual, so that we can dig into that deeper.
So I have a quick question. I really like the idea of the cohorts and the kids staying in the classroom and the teachers kind of circulating from class to class. I think that makes such sense. My question is, if we have an AM group and a PM group, will there be time between travel time for the classrooms to be sanitized and cleaned before the next group comes in the afternoon?
So, yeah, I think one of the, that would be part of the safety committee. In my mind, I would see that especially from a busing standpoint, it would probably take at least an hour for kids to get on the bus, get home, get everybody off the bus, and then do that route again to bring kids back. And that would give enough time for, first of all, the staff to eat, kind of take care of their own personal needs, and also to sanitize those classrooms 6 through 8. K5, and there's a question, I'll try to get through most of them. What is considered a young child? According to Children's Hospital expertise, they use the age of 12 and under, that's how we came up with the 5th grade class list. But yeah, I believe that there would be enough time in between to make that happen, Molly.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question. So Larry, I'm thinking about your current recommendation. And I'm wondering under the recommendation, how many kids would you anticipate being in each building and how many adults? If you thought about that, because you said maybe 80 to 100 won't participate. So I'm thinking of North Shores, like our North Shore reopening for the North Shore Health Department. And we're in phase C right now, I believe, which limits gatherings to 50 or suggests, I don't know, there's a 50 people maximum for public venues, doesn't list schools. So I'm just trying to figure out how we're envisioning this with the backdrop of safety guidelines and the current number of cases in the North Shore and all of that.
So I kind of mentioned earlier that I've been meeting with the other area district administrators from the North Shore. Included in that group is the health, is
Yeah.
Ann from the health department, not only the North Shore Health Department, but also the Washington County, Ozaukee County health people. They were very clear that schools are excluded from that, the minimum number of people.
Okay.
I would say Parkway would be pretty busy. I know that there are parents who from 4K through 3rd grade that will exclude their kids, but not many. And so a normal year at Parkway is close to 500 students and probably about 65 adults in that building at any given time. It might be a little bit lower this year, but that would be my expectation. Someone talked about cohorts and would K through 5th grade be split into cohorts? And my answer is yes, that a 2nd grade class would just be a 2nd grade class. One of the reasons behind this, even with what Children's Hospital said, if you are able to limit to less than 15 minutes of extended time with people, if someone has COVID, if a teacher or a staff member has COVID and is assigned to a room, you can quarantine that entire room and not have to close down the whole school. Now, as the more that you're moving, and if it's a person that's moving throughout the building quite a bit and is in different classrooms, then you may have to close down the entire school. But really the newest research, and again, I give the caveat, 2 things, that they made it very specific that that's the best of their knowledge today. And I also just talked about my recommendation is today's recommendation, not necessarily the recommendation to go forward. I'm saying that's the best information that I have right now. But yeah, Parkway would be a full building for the most part.
And so you think the North Shore Health Department, from your conversations with them, they would say that's okay. I know they can't endorse it, but they're not saying not to do it.
They would not let it happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Someone asked about the meeting times, and yes, the meeting times will be on the survey. You might have them off the top of your head, Shannon, but I know there's a 9 to 11 for one, 11 to 1 for another, and 1 to 3 for the third. We are still discussing that, and we'll have a final decision before the surveys go out about making one of those a night meeting. But because of the quick turnaround, it's a lot of the meeting time is next week. It's Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday of next week.
Larry, if I can follow up on that, I'm just concerned, and I was hoping you could speak to a little bit about thought process behind, how the committee, breakdown was arranged. Here's my concern. We are going to go in, we're going to have a select group of people, we're going to have times, and we're going to have meetings in person. We're automatically down selecting a lot of people who would otherwise be able to contribute. And my fear is that we're only going to be getting a slice of the voice of the people from those people who are willing to be in a room for extended periods of time, to debate these issues. Wouldn't we be better off having, a discussion? And I know that we're also pressed for time. I recognize there are no easy answers in any of this stuff, and you guys are doing everything that you can. I recognize that. But wouldn't we be better off having a survey that says, when can you meet? What's the best times? And would you prefer to meet, virtually? Because I'm just afraid that people who are going to have legitimate concerns aren't going to be voiced because they aren't going to be able to attend, or they aren't going to want to attend in person. That's my concern.
I share your concern, but I go back to what you started with. I don't have a better option today. Because I also need to make sure that someone's leading these committees. It isn't just someone. So, you know, currently I have Ms. Westfall leading the instructional committee and Dr. Kilton leading the social emotional committee, and Dr. Smith and Jim Beckman leading the health and safety committees. So again, the reasons it's Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday is those 4 people are all able to be here Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Wednesday, I forget which one, but someone's out of town next Wednesday. And so that's why we created the 3 with the understanding that because coming back to the board on July 28th, that's a quick turnaround. I do think that July 28th we will be able to accept other people's feedback who weren't able to be part of the committees and kind of go through this. I also want to point out, as you might see me reach sometimes, I have my phone here, and thank you to Karen, just so people understand that if you are putting something in the chat room, she is making a copy of it. So if I miss you somehow or the board misses you somehow, I will be able to get back to you specifically. But if you have more questions, I'll answer them. But my thinking is let's go straight down the list of the chat, unless you have a better option.
I just think that, you know, we ought to be doing it by Zoom at the very least. But you know, I've said it, I appreciate it, and I know what you guys are doing.
I did say that we want people in person, but we will have the Zoom option. Okay. I do believe that obviously a working group means you're doing work. And so I envision a large room like the library or the commons in here, but probably, you know, a lot of you know, easels with different paper where people can write down different ideas. And that's just easier in person with masks and social distancing than it is through Zoom. But
So sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Over the course of the 3 meetings you're proposing for the groups, would they create a written report? Would they keep minutes that would be published? How will people have access to what's being discussed? Because that may address, at least it goes to a little bit for people who can't participate. If they can see what's going on, they can at least comment to us, you know, through email or calls or whatnot about and present their.
I think that's a good idea. It's not something that I've completely thought all the way through, but yeah, they would be coming back to give a report to the board. I would assume that report would have, you know, either a PowerPoint presentation or something that we can make public to the, and you know, there's no reason that we can't assign someone to be the, you know, the note taker at each of the meetings and post those.
I just think it's important to be transparent about the process. So if I can't attend some of these meetings, I still want to be able to know what was discussed, yep, what options were considered or why they weren't considered, et cetera.
I also think they have to be properly noticed. I've been thinking about this, and I know that we're talking about it right now, making it available, but in essence, whether or not the board takes action to do it or not, this is a public meeting of a group that's going to give a recommendation to the board. You know, if we can at least make sure that those dates are posted so that people have access to that beyond, you know, the survey, I'd feel very comfortable with that.
Karen, if you're taking notes, we can definitely post all of the meetings, and then we would be more specific about, I'll be specific about where they are going to be held. And the survey tomorrow, I don't even think we put down, I'm anticipating they're going to all be held here at Glen Hills Middle School because Glen Hills has air conditioning and Parkway doesn't. So, but we'll be specific about the room also. So going down the list, I think I just answered Carrie's, will the meeting times be listed? Above that, when are we addressing the SE children? I think, Mr. Paquette, the plan for K-5 would be that all SE children are in the building. There has been some discussion, and I think this will come out during the instructional part of that committee. Could we have some 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in the building full-time getting, you know, their core academics and intervention time? I think that's a possibility, but I don't want to promise something without it happening. Part of our goals and one of our belief statements is making sure that all students, and especially our most vulnerable children, that their needs are met. I'm curious, the average class size is depending by grade level, but the board is, our board recommendations is anywhere from 18 to 25. Mr. Sandler, I love how you think, but I do believe, and actually we have a summer school phys teacher who's doing a phenomenal job of being able to do a virtual PE. I think it's difficult, but I think that's something that we can do. Amanda, sanitized classroom between cohorts sounds like what airlines do. I don't know if that's a positive or a negative, but we will have to do the best that we can. Actually, thank you for Ms. Siemens for asking about the lunch. My thinking, we'd have to make sure that it happens for grades 6 to 8 is after they do if you're a morning cohort, you are doing a grab and go lunch as you're getting on the bus. And if you're an afternoon cohort, as you get off the bus, you're doing a grab and go lunch to take to your first hour class. Ms. Blanchard, if masks are not mandatory, you may have some staff who won't be able to teach in person. I will, Eileen, I don't know if I have the power to mandate masks, but I do know that the city of Glendale passed a resolution saying that indoors masks are required. And I could see doing the same thing. I can mandate masks for staff and say it's part of our rule, and I believe that's going to happen. But you know, we will. I think that's also the Health and Safety Committee having a long discussion about that. I will tell you that from the governor to the Children's Hospital, they believe that kids as young as 3 can have masks on without a problem, with several exceptions.
Larry, we can't have any program without kids wearing masks as a rule. There may be exceptions, but I mean, I don't think anyone's going to want their kid to be in school if another kid has no consequence for not wearing a mask. That's a big point.
Well,
That's a board decision. We'll decide.
We'd have to be very clear about if we choose to make that as a you know, no nonsense. This is everybody has to be in a mask. Then you just have to enforce it. So
Mika, can you clarify the resolution? Because I saw messaging, I feel like, online that said the city of Glendale requires masks, and I wasn't able to attend the meeting, so I don't, is that for 4 years and up? Does the city require it or no?
I am going to take off my school board hat, put on my alderman hat.
Thank you.
We, as a board, the Common Council decided that we did a resolution, not a mandate, not an ordinance. And the reason we did that are a few reasons, and I think they're important to understand, which is different than I think a school board and dictating what we did citywide compared to school board wise. Citywide, there's no, the reason, and at least this is the way I voted, is the reason why I did not vote. There is no meat to a ordinance mandate. And what that means is, yeah, you can call, and let me go back. What the mandate said was, or what the ordinance was going to say is that if we did an ordinance that mandated it, people would be able to call, businesses would be able to call the health department, and the health department would enforce by contacting the city attorney. Well, one of the reasons I didn't like that is, one, because the North Shore Department is already understaffed as it is trying to deal with this, but making them mandate things this is what the discussion was. The second part of that is there is no consequence. Even if we mandate it, there's no consequence. So then there's a law without any enforcement. So we strongly, strongly recommend that people take personal responsibility in regards to COVID. But it's no, I don't like making rules just to have rules, when there's no consequences of having those rules. And it starts a bigger discussion and a bigger argument. As a council member, as me speaking as a school board, I believe it's a little bit different and in the school setting and in the children's setting. So just in general for me, if we mandated masks in the school setting, I would not be against that for me, and I'm not speaking for the board, but on the city side, it's a resolution that strongly recommends education and that businesses do require that people wear masks, but it is not an ordinance.
Got it?
Just for, and Andy, I guess you will get to decide this, but I'm going to continue to go down through the questions. If you decide that this is, I have about 65 to go. So if you want us to do a fact sheet and take each one and be able to post something, we can do that. A lot of them are similar, so I think I can get through them fairly quickly. But you let me know if you want, for like sanitation. Ms. Mallerman, Ms. Zustoff are asking, what about sanitizing? Who would? And in my mind, again, that would be about part of the health and safety committee, but I would believe that would be from in the building, it would be a custodial staff. On the buses, we are working with Right Way, and we have told them that their buses must be sanitized in between each route. So they understand that. Lunches came up again, and no, our job as a district is to make sure that every child has access to lunch, and we will do that some way, somehow. Even for the kids, the 6th through 8th grade kids, lunch will be provided. Working groups do some free out. Amanda, I can chat with you specifically to help you. If 7th and 8th grade were all virtual, would 3rd be shifted to Glen Hill to create more space? I did say that last time, Sam Holmes. I believe that the as many kids as we can get into our buildings face to face is important. What is the SF of an average classroom at Parkway? Mr. Stetler, Ms. Stetler, what is somebody help me with SF?
Square footage.
Square footage.
All right, Jim, that's a you question. Thank you.
They average around 1,200 for the K4, K5 rooms, 1,200 square feet. The other classrooms are a little bit over 1,000 square feet.
Thanks, Jim.
Can I piggyback that question? What do we know about the ventilation in both buildings? Maybe Jim could speak to that.
I can. The ventilation in Glen Hills is very good. I've been to numerous meetings, and I was at a conference all day today, in-person conference actually, with about 60 people. So it was quite exciting to get out. But we've done everything we can to our ventilation systems. At Glen Hills, we're going to run the system virtually round the clock before school starts to purge everything. We've changed all the filters. We've cleaned everything, and it's ready to go. Parkway's a little bit more of a challenge, but they have one thing going for it. We can open every window at Parkway, and fresh air is a really good thing to fight COVID. Now, the only thing you run into is humidity. So we may have to look at how to address some humidity issues at Parkway, but we can get the air exchanged at Parkway by running the univents that have all been cleaned and filters changed, getting air that way, plus opening all the windows if we have to exchange the air. So it may be a little warm and uncomfortable, but we can at least have fresh air in the building. At Glen Hills, we purge the building 2 hours before school starts. We purge it after school ends, which cleans almost everything out of the system. So we are taking steps to do that and putting those things in place. Did that answer a question, Danielle?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Shannon reiterated, just so everybody knows, that we are copying each question. So if I miss something, we will, I said it earlier to Andy, we will do a kind of a question answer. I will do that and get it out on our website within a day or two with all these questions so that people can have them. The increasing of staffing, Ms. Marvin, I'm not sure about. But obviously, if we're doing a completely virtual for 80 to 100 kids, I can't expect a fourth grade teacher to have a fourth grade cohort and then do a virtual option on top of it. So we will have to work that out. And Ms. Zutov, yes, there will be people who will be exposed to some students throughout the day. That's just the reality of where we are. How can you ensure social distancing? I kind of talked about that for, it's must be Webster, but I don't know exactly. I talked about that last meeting. I think social or physically distancing is a wonderful theory. The reality is first graders don't physically distance. You can start physically distance, but they will inch their way into and on top of your lap. The same is true for basically all, I mean, as humans, we have that social interactions. Bathrooms would be part of the health and safety committee that we would probably limit, one child in a bathroom at a time. And it's going to be a heavy load for the teachers. And there's no doubt about that for all school personnel. We are expecting a lot out of our people.
Larry,
The Parkway can be 20 to 22 kids. Will that be reduced? I don't see at this time. 2 weeks ago, I said, let's do 15 students per classroom. I think after talking with Children's Hospital, I think having 20 to 22 kids in a classroom is safe. And that's according to the children's pediatricians, doctors that we talked to. Andy, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to clarify, because I appreciate you going through this, but maybe we need to, just reiterate that if someone's not putting their question in here, we're still about to go do virtual enter our visitor participation. So if they want to make a statement, they're still able to do that. And then there's also the other items on the agenda that they're going to be able to participate with. But I just wanted to make sure that we had a delineation between what we're doing now. It's really kind of the action, the report item, but we didn't really go to visitor participation. And I guess I want to make sure that as we go through all these questions, if people want to raise a question that they ask out loud, either about this or about any of the other items, that we're still going to get to that after you go through the list. That's all I want to clarify.
If someone has a budget question, they can do that chat when we approve the budget. So yes.
Yeah.
Discussion about providing raises for our teachers. I would love to. I think that becomes a fiscal question. I think it depends on what the federal government and the state government does. Teachers are underpaid. I've said that for my entire life. If a teacher tests positive, that again will be part of the health and committee currently. If a teacher tests positive, they would, whatever classroom they are in charge of would probably have to be quarantined from my understanding. Ms. Zemitz, we will be able to help you do it virtually. Ear turnover. I think Mr. Beckman took care of that. Mr. Leosa. How about if we choose only virtual learning? And okay, that again, my recommendation today stands until at 7:45, probably stands until about midnight today. And that, I'm not saying that this is what's going to happen. I said, if I had to make a decision today, that'd be my recommendation. I fully expect, and I'll get on my soapbox here for just a second. I sure hope that our state and our community does what's needed to reduce COVID-19 in our area. I'm also fairly, if I was a betting man, I would bet that we will have an all virtual sometime this fall, that schools will have to be closed down or will be closed down by the governor or the health department. I hope I'm wrong, but that's why, Jenica's instructional committee has to be working not only what happens when kids are here, but also when kids are not here.
Larry, to that point then, in your mind, what would warrant a full shutdown as a governor's order? Like, I'm wondering what would warrant a full shutdown fully virtual in your mind, and who would decide that? who we would look to
Well,
decide that.
if it's mandated to us by the governor or by the health department, then we have to follow their order.
Right, but does it
As
have
a,
to be mandated? That's what I'm saying.
yep, as a school board, I could make the recommendation and you can shut down schools. What would cause me to make that recommendation or tell you that we should do this? I would say, and again, please don't take this out of context. The number of children having COVID is pretty small. It happens, but it's pretty small. I would compare this to the regular flu season. If we get 20 to 25% of our adults who can't come into work because they have COVID or they've been quarantined, it's really difficult to run school buildings without enough adults in the building to make sure that kids are safe. So when it gets to that's, and we had that probably about 6 or 7 years ago where Parkway Elementary School was closed for a day because we had so many staff members who had influenza. But that in my mind, that's the only reason that I would bring it to the board or make that recommendation, unless we're forced to.
Guys, I lost connection, so.
No problem. Outdoor spaces, yes, we are concerned outdoor spaces as much as possible. Thank you. Throw away their mask in the garbage by accident. I will tell you one nice thing that the state has done. They have already sent us 2,000 masks for all of our students and staff, and our PTO is discussing, and I think they finalized that they are also buying masks for students. So if again, accidents happen and if something is broken or thrown away, we will have masks and plenty of masks for anybody. Shannon already answered that. Is there a plan to stagger commencement times to minimize hallway? Yeah, I think that's part of the health and the planning to make sure that kids aren't in the hallway all at the same time. We have both options. I'm not quite sure what mesh-pesh means. If you want to clarify. As the district gotten to the point where it can calculate the safe capacity of each classroom in the district. Yeah, Amanda, I do think after listening to the current advice from Children's Hospital and their pediatricians, they truly believe that children under the age of 12, that there is not a capacity issue. And so again, our normal class sizes are between 18 and 25. So most of them, almost every grade level is under 23. 7th grade is a large group though. Outdoor spaces. Shannon, you let the cat out of the bag. Yes, I do plan on mandating masks. I wasn't going to do that till Monday, but after talking with Children's Hospital and having discussions with other superintendents, I believe it's not just going to be Glen Hills or Glendale. I think that you're going to get that from multiple schools, that if you are in the building, you will be wearing masks. And so employees, you're going to get that email from me on Monday. Outdoor spaces, I agree with everybody on the outdoor spaces. We are looking into that. Again, from Craig G, I'm not sure exactly. That people are exposed to many people. The most recent research is that you have to have 15 minutes or more of extended close contact with people to be able to end up with COVID-19. Obviously, there's exceptions. What the doctors from Children said, if someone comes and sneezes on you, obviously that's close contact right there. You don't have to be 15 minutes with somebody, but really for the virus to change from one person to another, it's 15 minutes of close contact. So, just by bumping into somebody or being exposed to somebody, usually, again, from their point of view, you should be safe.
But so we would be asking teachers to be in close contact with multiple students for a prolonged period of time Because you're essentially saying social distancing isn't possible. We're going to have 20 plus kids in a class. So, and 60 plus adults in a building. So I imagine there'd be emphasis on keeping the adults away from each other. But did Children's talk at all about kids transmitting to adults versus adults transmitting to kids? And so are we just sort of accepting the risk that teachers will have that kind of exposure if someone in their class has COVID-19?
The answer is in between. What Children's really, they spent a long time talking about that younger children really do not seem to be transmitting COVID to others, and they seem to be pretty immune from it from others. That doesn't mean that it can't happen, but yeah, when we reopen, there's going to be risk of COVID to both the adults and kids in schools, but we want to mitigate that as much as possible. Someone did talk about Good Hope School here. I would like to consider that an option, but it would not be school user friendly in 1 month. There'd be more work that needs to go on to Good Hope. Mr. Beckman and I did go over there and walk through it. It's going to need a little bit of work and isn't going to be ready in 1 month. What are the metrics for going fully virtual? There would be a number of cases. Lisa, I'm not positive. I can't tell you if it's, is it 5% or, but I think that would be pretty much either it's going to be a mandate, as I said before, or if it's the North Shore shutting down, I would assume if we're going to shut down all buildings, we would do that probably from Shorewood, Whitefish Bay, Nicolay, Mapledale, Brown Deer, Fox Point. That would be a discussion for the district administrators.
Larry, do you know if the North Shore is planning on updating their their Phase C reopening plan? It's from like June 11th. So I know you've been meeting with them. Have they mentioned because currently we're not meeting the gating metrics for Phase C, and they say if we don't, then they'll go back to Phase B, but that was from June 11th. So I don't know if you have any insight into that.
I haven't asked that question at our last meeting, but I can bring that up. Our next meeting is tomorrow. So
yeah, I'm just curious because we have like 87 cases in the North Shore according to the North Shore Health Department's website, and there's a couple metrics. There's at least one red, gating criteria, which dictates we should be going back to Phase B. So I'm not in the loop there.
So that hasn't been brought up in our last few meetings, but I can bring that up tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
Technology makes recording. Who is that? Ryan. I think this was also. Yeah, we will try as best as possible to be able to have minutes for the meeting so that we get that out to people. The masks have been ordered. We do have, Mr. Beckman has ordered we have over 200 face shields for staff. The discussions were if we're going to mask, we would ask kids to mask, not wear face shields. But we have enough of them that if there are a few kids who can't wear masks, that we can get them face shields. We have so much hand sanitizers, wipe, signage, drinking. Mr. Beckman and his group have really taken that into account, and we're doing. This is going to be the most sanitized buildings that you've ever walked into. For 7 hours without air and low air. I agree, Carrie, but I will tell you right now that the high recommendation is having masks on. That doesn't mean that you can't take it off for short amount of time, but for the most part, having masks on. Mr. and Mrs. Stetler, I will tell you, I'm not sure if you are participating in Summer Academy, but I would tell you that our Summer Academy feedback that we're getting from our Summer Academy kids is we put in a lot of time in June to make sure that our teachers were ready for Summer Academy. And unfortunately, when March 13th happened, some teachers I think did great. Other teachers were overwhelmed. our job is to make sure that everybody is ready to go from a staffing standpoint.
We are participating in the Summer Academy, which is why I asked the question, because I am finding a much greater level of like concentration and participation from my K-5 and second grader. And my question is, for our virtual systems, are we taking like the professional development and the steps that we need to be taking in for our teacher support, as well as for parents and students, because of course there's a learning curve, to be able to convert to a full virtual system without losing so much of the interpersonal community? Is it going to be a live-based virtual system?
The quick answer is yes, and hopefully you've noticed it with our Summer Academy. We took June to make sure that all our Summer Academies teachers were well prepared and understand that virtual learning is different. The plan is to do that professional development with all staff members in August. So even if we start and miraculously everything clears up and we start all in person, we will be much more prepared with all staff members to go virtual if and when we have to do that.
Okay, thank you.
The CDC guidelines, that is part of the health and safety. The socially distance, I think I've talked about. Ms. Franklin, I think if and when we do all virtual, it would be by class, but I think I just answered that question. And also, not all staff members were prepared for that, and we're doing the professional development on that in August before school starts. Outdoor classrooms. You see vigorous learning. I think I'm just answering that for the virtual. Oh, thank you, Kathleen Steele, or Catherine Steele. I probably should have started with this. And the board has heard this and the administrators have heard this. I do believe that we have to be flexible. I think what we start with on September 1st, the recommendation will be for the first trimester, which is basically Thanksgiving, with constant reevaluations. The committees that we are talking about, if you are unable to participate next week, we do plan on having those committees run throughout the year, so that if you're not able to next week, that doesn't mean that you can't be part of the communication going forward. So Kathleen or Catherine Steele, thanks for that question, because that's on my notes to mention, and I know I missed it. So on school buses, yes, we are mandating that bus drivers and students wear masks on bus. Right Way knows that, and we will monitor that. I'm not specific on how yet, but we will make sure that that's happening. Again, for the special ed students who can't tolerate masks or sensory issues, having a grandson with autism, I understand that, and there always, with all rules, I don't believe in zero tolerance. I believe that there's always an exception or a reason. So obviously we would have to have consideration for that. The sick time for teachers, I know that our board, it's not in our handbook, but obviously our board and our community is very understanding. So I can't say yes without talking to the board, but I would assume that if an employee has COVID-19, we'd make sure that they are taken care of. Again, the more mask questions. In the Ms. Franklin, without getting into specifics, I do have 11 out of the 106 staff members that want to talk to me, that they're not completely against coming back in person. But so we would have to figure that out in the next. And again, Ellen, that's kind of your question also. And the requiring masks as I'm going through this, I'm not sure how many, I have more to go, but. I have considered the lowercase g's question about a phased in approach, something like MPS's. I believe after talking with Children's Hospital and for our community, I don't want to speak for MPS, it's a completely different community. I believe that, again, as I said, if today, I do believe it's safe for all students to come back from kindergarten 4K through 5th grade. But obviously that the safety of our kids there's nothing more important than that. I'm skipping over in future surveys. I'm looking at that and we are taking this down. So we can ask better questions. I know that no survey is perfect, but we will continue as we send out surveys to tweak the questions to make sure they're appropriate. How many janitors work at Glen Hills? Is it reasonable to expect them? We have 6 full-time janitors in the district, and Jim and I'm not sure if Rosie's on this. We know that we may have to increase our custodial staff. In windows, if there's change in staffing. Again, Ms. Franklin, we are putting in procedures. If a child is sick, what does that mean? Obviously, we have to be able to isolate in both buildings. We do have space for that in both buildings. What are the class numbers per room for K5? Ms. Stetler, I can't tell you specifically. It depends on how many kids are in each grade level. We will separate them as best we can. Questions about windows that I think Jim can talk to, and we'll do a Q&A session for this. I don't even know, Mr. Beckman, you might know more about Fogger than I do. I'm going to, I think Mr. Franklin, just because I'm not sure how close I am to the very finish, but I'm on 7:43 and it's 8:05, and I see that more questions are popping in. So I would suggest that you let me do a very specific, that we have these copied and that we will give specific answers to each one and move on with the meeting unless there's a specific question that you think I need to answer as you scroll through these.
I don't. I mean, and I appreciate that. And by the way, I don't know if you have any water there, but you've definitely been going at it. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate all the questions that everyone's chatted in. You know, when I interjected before, it was just in case people wanted to organize their question into the actual visitor participation section, that they could do that. And I think though, nonetheless, went through really as many questions as we can. I think that your idea, Larry, about answering every question that gets answered is good, but I think that as a board, we also need to make sure that we commit to getting those same questions and reviewing them as well. But I think that under the circumstances with all the questions that are there, I don't want to cut anyone short. But, you know, if you have questions about our reopening plans, I would encourage you to continue to put those in through the end of the meeting. Even we can scroll through those and then, you know, make sure that the board hears those, you know, and then Larry, as you say, go back to those questions and give, you know, firm answers. I'm fine doing that if that's how you want to do it. And we do have the rest of the agenda as well.
I think we could sit here, and I think each answer I give creates more questions too. And I do understand that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody. But again, that's one of the reasons that we are creating the 3 working groups, that we can go through all of these questions and try to get our best answers, knowing that the plan that we put in place September 1st will most likely change. And the plan that we probably bring to the board on August 5th might have to change by September 1st. Whatever we do is going to have to be a flexible plan, and safety is our #1 priority. But at the same time, the vast majority of parents are talking about we need kids in school. That's where we need them to be as safe as we can get them.
So I just want to make the comment that the survey is for some of us 2 weeks old, and I took the survey 2 weeks ago. So my answers would change completely. And so I think that what we're seeing from the chat is that people want to, I wonder if we consider a listening session as part of one of these working groups charges as we go forward, or just making space for more of this communication and transparency in some way. Because I don't know.
I would also say, and just follow up on that, I don't know that it's the vast majority of people that want reopening or what that reopening is. I'm seeing a lot of very specific questions about the details here, and as everything, I think devil is in the detail. And one of the problems that we have is that that survey, like you said, it's a snapshot in time. And we've, since that snapshot was taken, had a lot of negative news about things continuing. I'm also not convinced, at this point, that kids don't transmit it or that they don't, suffer from it. These are things that we definitely need to get, knowledge about. And I would also ask Larry that at the next board meeting that we have on this, I would like to have someone from at least North Shore Health Department come to talk about that, with that specific issue, actually, the issue of transmission among kids and also severity. I'm hearing some things that one of the issues with children is that it's underreported, but also that children were the first ones taken out of the system. And so I just want to get some reassurance from a health perspective about what these studies are really saying, as opposed to the headlines. And I think that, while it's certainly a lot of information to hear and to take in, I'd like Danielle's idea that maybe we, have, as many sessions as we need in order to listen to the people and listen to the science on this.
Well, I will definitely invite Ann. I can't guarantee that she'll be July 28th, depending on her schedule, but we have July 28th and August 5th already on the books, and I will invite her to see if she can come to either one of those.
I think, the administrative team doing a wonderful job here, trying to get these issues out and dealing with a lot of difficulties, and it's really a Herculean task and something that we haven't had to deal with before. So, I appreciate a lot of the patience that parents have demonstrated. I also appreciate the concern that they have and the desire to, to get those answers. We're working through them, and we're going to do the best job that we can for you. And I think it's a conversation, and we're going to be going forward step at a time. I think it's fair to say, Larry, that we're going to meet our goals, and we're going to get all the best information we can. And if things change, we're going to be up on that and make sure that we adjust to do the right thing going forward.
And again, going back, our professional development in August with teachers will be making sure that if and when we need to go virtually online, that we will do a much better job. I'm not criticizing the job we did in March through June, but we can be better, and we know that we can be better, and we're going to help our teachers and our staff be able to do that better if and when we need to go all virtual. So again, I also appreciate what everybody and all the questions and how many people are actually participating. I think that's wonderful. And I will put this on our website. We'll do a question and answer, and so that you have the best information that I have today. And that's what I can do. As I started this was, if I had to make a recommendation today, that this is my recommendation, knowing that it's probably going to change by the time we meet again. So. Moving on then to old business, if you're okay with that, Mr. Franklin?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So we amended policy AC.
Well, actually, Larry,
Skipping over visitor participation, or was
Yeah.
that, are you considering that visitor?
that's just what I was about to say, to move on to visitor participation, because we moved it up in part to facilitate our discussion here. So, if someone has a comment on any, really, and anything further going forward, non-agenda item is what visitor participation is supposed to cover, but we specifically anticipated addressing the agenda items with additional visitor participation days. So because it's in the agenda at the place that it is, if anyone has any other comments or questions, now would be the time to put your name into the chat box and have Karen call on you. I think that, Larry, that we have to do that. And I think with the, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but this is for non-agenda items or agenda items that we haven't spoken about. I understand, I know several people would like to make a statement about what we just had. I think I'd rather not go through that. And if I'm more than willing to call and talk to people, but the part of visitor participation you're talking about really is if it's a non-agenda item or something that we haven't talked about yet.
So we'll give you a few moments if you have questions on something other than the discussion on the reopening.
Is the plan then to address every question that is and will be submitted in the chat, or to follow up with those people? Because I have a feeling most of the people here have come to speak on this topic. And I know specifics are not decided, so maybe it doesn't make sense to sort of ask those questions. That seems like for the working group, but I don't know if there are other comments that people are going to want to make. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I'm looking at the chat, and frankly, Larry, there were people that, and I saw this, on social media too, that planned on making a statement that didn't want to make a chat. And I think that it's worth it at this point to, if there are any people who want to talk about this item, because we moved the visitor participation to that point. If there's anyone who wants to make an oral statement and didn't want chatted put into the chat box, I think we ought to at least listen to that. And I know Carl is asking to do that, and there may be a couple others. So
has Amanda. And I'm, again, you get to do this part of the board meeting, so I defer to you. The answer to your question, Danielle, is yes. I will go through each one of these and answer each question specifically. And the Stetlers would also like to speak. So I think going back, I've seen Amanda, Carla, and either Eric or Tracy Stetler. Karen, if you're still paying attention, why don't we start with Amanda, Carla, and then either Eric or Tracy Stetler or both. And then if anybody else wants to speak, you can add that to the chat box now. And if I miss somebody, please just re-put your name in.
Yep, I see Lisa too, so I'm going to add her to my list.
Okay.
So we're going to start with Amanda. It's going to take me a second. Well, there's a lot of Amandas. So which?
I see Amanda with a blue hand up on my screen, so I'm guessing it's that Amanda.
Okay.
She's must have done Zoom before.
I don't see that on my end. So Amanda Gross, Amanda Kaler.
I have just Amanda.
Okay.
Maybe I can unmute her. Nope, I can't. I'm not the host.
No, you know what? I'm going to make you a co-host,
Okay.
and you can help. Okay. Can you?
Yep.
It's Amanda Seligman, whatever.
Oh, okay.
All right, Amanda, you are unmuted, so you are up. Amanda Seligman. Oh, now you're muted again. Sorry. My screen shows you unmuted, Amanda. Hopefully you are.
Can you hear me?
Barely. Can you turn up your volume?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you at a whisper, Amanda.
All right, I can only control what I'm hearing, not my own audio. So why don't I go back in line and somebody
Let it
else-
get closer to our computer.
How about that? Can you hear me
There.
now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for your patience. I have a prepared statement that I'd like to read that I wrote before the meeting. My name is Amanda Seligman. I'm a resident of 7120 North Braeburn Lane in Glendale and the parent of a rising 8th grader at Glen Hills. There are no good options for the fall, only less bad ones. We must choose practices that mitigate as much harm as possible while protecting the life and health of our students and staff. I propose the following principles that I would like to see govern the return to school in the fall. 1, regular in-building instruction should resume only when COVID is not still actively circulating in our community, according to public health authorities and data from Milwaukee County and Wisconsin. 2, no staff member or students should be required to be in the school building unless they volunteer to be present. People who are frightened for their lives will not teach or learn well. 3, students with special educational needs and whose families cannot manage with them continuing to be at home full-time should have top priority for access to adult supervised time at school. These principles to me imply that the district should adopt a flipped classroom model. Here's what I would suggest. First, the mask ordinance has already been discussed. 2, all formal instruction takes place online, with Chromebooks again issued to all students and grants for internet access to families who cannot afford it. As occurred in the spring, teachers should minimize the requirement to attend synchronous sessions to prevent bandwidth conflicts within households. Holding optional synchronous sessions should be encouraged. 3, the school buildings are opened up with staff and other adult volunteers who are willing to be physically present and supervise small cohorts of children. I realize that isn't what Larry was telling us tonight. The combination of the number of voluntarily present adults plus social distancing factors should determine how many children can be present in the school together. The in-person adults can then A, supervise the work of students who need direction to get going and stay on task, B, provide additional tutoring and instruction to meet the particular education needs of the students present. 4, and this is the most important principle in my view, priority for access to the in-person building time should be explicitly allocated to families with the greatest needs as determined by staff. Families who can manage with their children at home and whose students will suffer the least from continued lockdown have lower priority for building access. It's possible that people could sign up on a drop-in model so that even the most locked down students could have some opportunity to connect with peers in person. 5, return to regular in-school instruction should not begin until the public health gating criteria indicate that it's safe to do so. According to the state's Department of Health Services, Wisconsin is currently back down to 2 out of 6 gating criteria met. I know that this is not going to be an easy decision. I am an educator myself and have placed a central value on education in my life, but I do not want our students and staff to face death or lifelong health effects for the sake of keeping up with standards of achievement that were imposed in more normal times. We continue in a state of emergency, and our choices about how to proceed should reflect that state of emergency. The situation is substantially worse now in Wisconsin than it was 4 months ago when the schools rightly shut down. Humans have a long adolescence. For those who survive this pandemic, there will be plenty of time to make up for lost learning. Let's maximize the numbers of our children and staff who have that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Amanda, I appreciate that you actually emailed that to the board also so that we have it in writing. So thanks.
This is an update, but I can send you this one too.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
I'm going to do Carla, Pennington Cross.
Hi, everyone. Is it
Hi.
okay? Can I show you my face?
Yep.
Okay, I will try to stay inside 3 minutes. First, I want to say this isn't what I was planning to say, but Larry, you have literally the worst job on earth right now. And I know you and your staff are working so hard to do what's right for all of us. And I just want to thank you for that. It's a thankless job you have, but I am thanking you. What I want to say is that as these infection numbers go up around the country and here, I am finding myself increasingly thinking about our teachers and staff, real people, real families, real people who share all the concerns that we parents have. And I could share so many stories about how amazing they are. The one I want to tell you about, the one I keep coming back to, is something that happened when my Nick was in first grade. Do you remember when there was a police chase through like Clutch Park and right past Parkway, and we went into sort of a brief lockdown?
Yep, I remember.
Well, so there was a huge car chase. Well, my Nick came home that night and he told me this story. I wrote it down so I get it right. I'm not going to cry. Mrs. Sheldrop closed all the curtains, turned out all the lights in their classroom. She didn't scare him. She told the kids to be very quiet, and she stood at the closed door and held the doorknob, listening. And I asked Nick if he understood what she was doing. And he thought about it, and he started crying, and I started crying, and he finally said, she was protecting me. She would have died for me. Our teachers give so much. I just can't ask them to give anymore. I'm not prepared for even one staffer to become a statistic. It would kill me inside. I don't want that for the sake of my child to walk into a schoolhouse. Asking teachers and staff to take on the risk of COVID-19 for Nick is asking too much for me, especially when we have the power to prevent it by moving to virtual learning. Children have this tremendous capacity to adapt. We see it every day in modern American schoolhouses, which tends to best serve kids who are extroverted, right, and competitive. In that setting, and you know where I'm gonna go with this, kids who are introverted, who have social anxiety, who learn best in solitude or through independent learning, who have developmental disabilities, mental health challenges, behavioral challenges, they learn coping strategies that allow them to learn and grow in a setting that's not designed for them. And we offer them guidance and supports. We offer them toolkits to help them do the best they can in this world that they face. And we see success every day, especially in our school district, right? We can continue to do that in this new world we face, though the kids who need extra supports might change. Today, I see some kids who are actually thriving. They're relieved of this relentless pressure of modern schoolhouse rules. Kids who are really good at learning in solitude, really good at working independently, filling their cups, right? What can we learn for these kids? What skills do they have that would benefit kids who are really feeling isolated and lost right now? I wish we were asking these questions and developing services to help kids build new resilience in this real pandemic world. I know there's a lot of fear. I believe our kids and families are capable of adapting to meet the challenge of virtual learning until it's really safe for us to come back to school without harming any teachers. I believe our district has the talent and commitment to make synchronous virtual learning happen well if we put our minds to it. Larry, I believe in your staff. I think you can make this happen. I know you're speaking moment to moment, as are us all, and I'm just really grateful as always for all of you. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Okay, I think we had just a couple more.
I'm gonna have Lisa Rondeau go next.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yep, hi, Lisa.
Okay, hi. I'm going to show you my video because as some people know, I'm a respiratory therapist, and this video is coming to you from Austin, Texas, where I am on a crisis contract working with the surge here with COVID-19 patients. So specifically, I just wanted to talk about masks, and we know that everyone wearing a mask works. It's one of the best tools we have for COVID. Hand washing, masks, social distancing. The problem is people don't do masks well, and that includes us as healthcare professionals. So in my current role here in Austin and back home in Milwaukee, we have people who are paid for 12 hours a day, 24 hours a day, every day, to stand there and watch us trained medical professionals put our gear on and take it off. Because the risk is so great that we will do that incorrectly and inadvertently touch our face, or somehow not get our respirator wiped down well and then put that back on and contaminate ourselves. So my concern is, while having masks required for staff and for students is obviously an important step, that asking everyone to do this well is so challenging. That how can we ensure that that will go well when you're talking about K4 kids who are probably going to be excited and touching it all day long, when you're talking about teenagers who are going to be worried about how they look and taking it on and off, and all of these other factors that go into it. That I think that's such a huge burden for teachers to deal with, for students to deal with, for special needs students to deal with, that I just worry about the practicality of some of these best practices working in schools. And so I think it's important to look at all of those pieces, so that we're not just saying, yes, we know masks are important, because that's true, but what does that really look like in a school? And how do we really make sure that that's executed well, so that we don't have accidental contamination? So that we don't have kids that are taking them off and setting them down for gym class and then putting it back on their face inside out, or grabbing their neighbor's mask because there's all blue masks lined up. But it's a lot more than simply saying masks and having masks. And that's my concern, is all of these great ideas sort of beget more steps, and lots more steps that have to happen after that. And those are the things that I think people need to be talking about as well. And then what's the reality of that, and can we do that safely at school?
Lisa, thank you. You're 100% correct. And actually the Children's Hospital doctors that we talked to said basically the same thing, that masks are really important, but it has to be done correctly.
Right. I saw Jenny Doss ask to speak. I don't think, and then Eric and Tracy Stetler.
Yep. You know what? I have the Stetlers ready to go now, and I have Jennifer on my list, so she'll be up soon.
Wonderful. And I think we're going to close it after that. It seems like no one else is there, so I think we can move on.
I do have one more.
Oh, well, no, I'm sorry. Then let's do that.
Okay. So let's start with the Stetlers.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I was hoping this call was going to go another way. I was hoping that we were going to have a lot more discussions about the plans that are being set into motion, meaning not a recommendation, an actual set of plans. What databases are we using? How are the parents and the students and the teacher going to be supported in those new systems and practices? As I'm sure you're aware, MPS just introduced a 256-page comprehensive 3-phase plan. And so from my perspective, where the numbers are at right now, which I did some quick math, from my perspective, to have even close to 20 or 22 children in a room at the Parkway facility with its current HVAC situation not only puts the teacher in extraordinary risk, but it also puts the students at risk. And I heard you cite Children's Hospital, an amazing hospital, very many times, but I didn't hear you cite the North Shore Health Department, the CDC, the WHO, any of the other science-related things that are out there. And so I did consult some of those places. And according to the Wisconsin Hospital Association, As of before this last surge, hospitalizations, of course, lag. Before this last surge, there were 5.5% of children who catch COVID end up in the hospital that are between the ages of 10 and 19. 8.3% of children who catch COVID in this state, Wisconsin, are hospitalized because of COVID, not dying, not death rate. If we put the Milwaukee death rate on our students and our teachers, that's one child. That's one child, and it's 4 teachers. And that's only doing the math at a 60% contagion rate. But you're talking about numbers that are way more than the math I ever expected to have to pull out, almost double the math. And so I mean, you might be looking at 80 or 85%. And what I'm talking about is finding 1 case to 2 cases in every week, what percentage chance you have with the capacity and the square footage of the room that you're asking these teachers and children to go into. And that very well dove points into the point that the nurse made just before me about the effectiveness of masks and how critical it is that they are supplied correctly. I'm pretty much begging you to come up with a plan that we are able to look at and feel comfortable with. I understand that today this would be your recommendation, but I need to know who else others outside of Children's Hospital is supporting that recommendation. And I need to know, I don't feel like our kids and especially our teachers can be safe in those numbers for an in-school setting, which makes me feel like I'm now forced to make a decision to choose an all virtual base in order to lighten the load for the teachers in this school. I would please urge you to err on the side of safety more than anything else. I don't think that COVID transmission rates are at all correct. I think they are our fastest and most effective. They are the one part of the pandemic mitigation practice that we engaged in that worked. It actually worked. And that's why these numbers are so low in transmission rate in children. But if you look at what just happened in Texas, that is a 759% increase in the childcare industry in 7 days' time. It took 7 days for 1,700 cases, 660 of those cases being children under the age of 10 to happen in Texas. And all of this happened while no one knew what was going on. I don't want to see our teachers and our students put into risk like that. And I'm hoping that, Larry, that you can come up with some sort of plan that states the steps. What are all the options? Do we have a virtual option? What does blended look like exactly? The idea that we're going to have 20 or 22 kids in a class is I mean, at the current numbers, that will not probably happen, especially if they keep going up like they are. But it's alarming. I have a K-5 and a second grader, and it's alarming to think that there are little to no mitigation practices outside of masks, which may or probably not be put on correctly, and a teacher who's putting her life at risk. I think I made my point. But I think that I would please like to not be forced out of this school system I've been a part of for 13 years. I love our teachers. I need to be able to continue at Parkway and Glen Hills. I have an 8th grader as well. I have 2 children over at Nicolay. Before these 2 children, I'm a long-standing parent of the Glendale-River Hills School District. And I feel like with a decision like that, I would be forced to either leave the district or choose a virtual option. I just need some reassurance from the board that there is not, that we're taking mitigation seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very
Sorry
much.
for crying.
Don't apologize, please.
Thank you.
I was looking for Jennifer Doss, but I don't see her on here anymore.
I see her.
Do you still?
Yep, she's on my screen.
I think I unmuted her, Karen.
Okay.
Yep, I'm unmuted.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi. I actually wanted to, I am concerned about COVID, as everybody else, but I am also concerned about how it's going to affect our special education students, the special education staffing, how it's going to look in person, especially if we're going to reduce class sizes, and how students are going to be supported in the classroom. And if we do have to go to virtual learning, how that's going to look. I have 6 students that have special education needs. We lost some ground with the virtual learning, and I am concerned about a whole year of unknowns. So especially with a 7th grader in a class of maybe 20 special education students and only possibly 1 special education teacher. So I really just find that concerning. And I know that COVID has taken a lot of our attention, but I just wanted to bring up my students, our students. I know that I saw other parents in the chat as well, talking about concerns about their students as well. And one of my students made tremendous progress last year, and then we got to virtual learning and then nothing happened. So, and she's going to be a 7th grader this year, and I'm terrified that she's going to regress more or not learn anything. And for a 7th grader, that would be terrible. And that's really all I had to say.
Thank you very much.
I just want to ask a point of clarification, Ms. Doss. Did you say that your child's going to be in 7th grade and there's one special, is that correct, that there's going to be one special ed teacher for 20 kids? I mean, is there other support? I guess I'm asking this of the administration about clarification on that.
Yeah, Molly, as past practice, we have a special education per grade level. This cohort of kids in 7th grade, there's always been 1 special education teacher per grade level, but Shannon and the principals always work to make sure that there's more support in that grade level, either through paraprofessionals or IEP sharing. If 6th grade is lower, or 5th grade is lower, or 8th grade is lower, they would come in and take 1 or 2 or 3 IEPs and work with the 7th grade team and work with that 7th grade special ed teacher to make sure that the kids are met.
So this last year, there were 2 special ed teachers, and my student who started the year at a 1st grade reading level was supposed to be, per her IEP, supposed to be supported in every single class that she was in. And I did.
You got cut off there, Jenny, or I did.
And you didn't.
She did.
So just, again, I don't want to get into an argument over people. Narissa Murray was a 6th grade special ed teacher last year, and Dominic McFerrin was part in 6th grade, and he also had other responsibilities outside of 6th grade. But yeah, that's the example that we are talking, that, you know, our current staffing plan, as Erin Norris is a 7th grade special education teacher, but we're not dumping 20 kids on Erin Norris. She will also have support.
Okay.
Okay, I have one last person on my list that I see, Tim Pickett.
Did you want to speak?
No. How do I do it? Where is it? Oh, sorry. No, I didn't really want to speak. I was just putting in my 2 cents that last year there was 2 SE teachers for the 6th grade class. And as a parent and a para, I'm very worried about all these special ed children and what will happen to them and just being left behind. And my daughter was doing so well, and virtual was just so hard. She needs a connection, and I know that with all this going on, that's not going to happen, but we need to just, be extra on top of it to help these kids. And I feel really strongly about it, and I have a hard time with, one teacher, because knowing that there will be so many more added children going into this, because so many children are going to be behind now. So it's not just going to be one teacher and a couple paras for all these students. It's not feasible. So that's it.
Thanks, Sheila.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm sorry, I do have one final one.
Okay.
It is Nancy Kopinski.
Are you there, Nancy?
There she is, I got her.
Okay, can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yep.
All right, thanks. I know I wrote to you guys, but I guess I just wanted to comment. When I filled out the survey originally, I feel like after I appreciated the opportunity to do the survey, because it made me really think about what a day in the life would look like for the kids and for the teachers. And then since then, all these cases have increased. And then I've also had the opportunity to take my son out for a couple appointments to orthodontist and a doctor. And, he did well with wearing the mask, right? And then until suddenly he didn't. And then I saw him touch a door and on his way out, and I thought, oh, better get the hand sanitizer. But I was too late. All of a sudden his hand was in his mouth, where he'd just gotten new rubber bands on his Invisaligns. And then he'd gone to a doctor appointment again, did okay, and then got out to the car, took off his mask, fine, and then he put it right back on, inside out, with the germ side or doctor office side on the inside by his mouth. I don't think it's, I think it's unreasonable, unrealistic, and unsafe to expect teachers and staff to be the mask and germ police, to teach in person and then also to teach virtually. I'm going to have my kids, I believe that virtual learning would be the safest option. And I think that our top priority should really be that no one dies during the 2021 school year, that should be our top priority, and that we should embrace a plan that will have the best likelihood for survival for the children, for their families, for our teachers and staff, for all of us. And then all other goals about academics, mental health, and socialization should come below that. And I guess, I think we all see the writing on the wall that virtual is coming no matter what, right? So I'd rather us put our time, talent, and financial resources into making that the best possible experience. And again, I second what Amanda was saying about there might be some situation where we really figure out who the priority people are to be served in person and have some smaller groups maybe coming in. But I really feel like safety absolutely has to come first. And I don't see it working. I don't think it's to be there in person with the numbers we have and how things are going in Wisconsin. So thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
And thank you to everyone who participated. And we're going to close the visitor participation, move on to the remainder of our agenda with the new items. But just in closing, I want to say thank you to everyone who attended the meeting to discuss this topic and who's following the reopening. Obviously, we're still going to be doing more work, but I want to say thank you again for the time you spent to ask the questions and the comments and to speak up, many of which are heartfelt, and as a board member and as a parent resonate with me greatly. But thank you also for trusting the school district to try to do what's right and move forward on this. And stay tuned with those surveys that are going to go out tomorrow, right, Larry, on the committees?
Yes, my plan is that Dr. Kilton, Jenica, and I will get them. We might have to change them a little bit after the comments that I heard today. We'll share them with the board first thing in the morning or fairly early in the morning just to get your final feedback, and then get them out hopefully by noon to 1 o'clock tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank you. Then on to, I think it's old business, right? 4A?
Yep, we redid our non-discrimination policy to include gender identity and gender expression. There have been no suggested changes from the first reading, so I will recommend that the board approve the second reading of policy AC, our non-discrimination policy.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I just want to say that I think that this is a good policy. I appreciate the changes that we made, including gender identity and gender expression. That was a good add, Danielle. And I am in favor of adopting it as is. Is anyone else willing to speak on it? Then I will close discussion and I will do a roll call vote for all those who are in favor of the motion to approve the second reading. Going on my screen from left to right, Tamika Vukovic.
Yes.
And then I have Danielle Bailey.
Aye.
And Molly Krachowiak.
Aye.
And Andrew Franklin votes aye. Thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, moving on to new business. The first part of new business is the consideration of the proposed 2020-2021 budget and tax levy for the annual budget hearing on August 26th. And this is a procedural vote that's due by state law. We've spoken publicly about this budget and possibly needing to change depending on what the state does. But right now, what we have to do from a legal standpoint is put this into our local newspaper and publish it. And so I'm asking that the board, the information about is in the agenda. We are not exactly positive how much money there will be for education. So we are building this budget, and the budget that I'm proposing that we pass in August is under current law. In the current law, there's an increase of $179 per pupil categorical aid increase. There's a 30% level of special education aid, which is up from 24%. We know that we have a 1.8% health insurance increase. We still haven't finalized the transportation budget, but we are budgeting a 3% increase in transportation. That might not be enough realistically. We have added a 1.0 social worker position for the district. Our class sections in all grades meet the district class size recommendations. We have maintained our buildings budgets for maintenance and repair. We completely ongoing update our student curriculum and maintain the curriculum budget. We have a tentative 1.81% CPI increase in salaries that we know that would be removed if there's a reduction from the state. But right now this budget has it in there. That's not specific raises per person. It's just the total amount of money between all employees. We are continuing shared service as much as we can, and the overall fund expenditures will be an increase of about 2%. So without going on and on and on about the budget, because we're going to talk more about it in August and probably even a lot more in October, I recommend that the board approve the 2021 budget for presentation at the annual budget hearing on August 26, 2020 in the amount of $18,173,322. I also recommend that the board approve the 2020-2021 tax levy for presentation at the annual budget hearing on August 26, 2020 in the amount of $13,550,596.
there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
I'd say Molly made the motion. Danielle, was that a second from you?
No, I can second.
Okay,
Thanks. Thanks, Larry. Any discussion?
I was, maybe Larry, you could just clarify, because I've been getting a lot of concerns about the special education budget, and we've heard questions and we're seeing the chat boxes and whatnot. This special education budget is not being cut, right? Like, can you just sort of clarify that we're not losing money there, right? The way you kind of clarified for me, I don't know if you could speak to that a little bit.
Sure. So, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, I apologize, but there's a federal law called Maintenance of Effort, MOE. It mandates that all school districts, not only in Wisconsin, but in the United States, cannot reduce funding in special education. There's a few exceptions to that. You know, if your special education numbers of students goes from 150 to 120, obviously there's some exceptions, but for the most part, I will tell you, our district has increased special education revenue and expenditures from 2018. This is off the top of my head. I sent you the specific numbers. I don't have them right in front of me. There's about $2.8 million that we spent 2 years ago. This past year, it was 3.2 million, and budgeted this year in the packet in one of the, you can see it's, or maybe it's 3.1 million last year. It's an increase of another about $50,000.
3.3 million, I think.
3.3 million for this year. Thank you. A special education teacher left. We are filling that role without hiring another special education teacher, but specifically by building, we have interventionists that have been working on intervention that are also special education certified, and they will be taking some of the certifications or some of the IEPs going into next year. We're getting into the weeds here a little bit. We've increased a social worker, so our actual special ed FTE is going up by 0.1 teachers, even with Amy Gallinger's resignation. We're increasing that. We also took a Title I position that we've had here at Glen Hills. We're turning that into a special education paraprofessional. So again, we are increasing special education staffing. We have a framework where we talk about, we have one special education teacher per grade level. We kind of just went through that. We're maintaining that. Almost not at Parkway, we're probably a little bit short of a 1.0 FTE special education teacher per grade level, but with but we're just about even with that. So actually the special education budget and the FTE, the people are actually going up with this budget, not down.
And then I know we've kind of talked about this before about like how COVID might impact the budget and it's going to be revised. So does this current budget account for any like anticipated physical infrastructure changes we might be making to the building? Or do you see that as part of the like reopening work groups or administrative as we formalize like a plan?
I think it's going to be part of the reopening. What's not included in this budget, because it's not finalized, because there's a lawsuit between the Department of Education, and I think it's now 31 states have joined this, the CARES Act money that Congress passed back in April. That's money unaccounted for. We haven't included that in this budget because we don't know exactly how much it is. It's going to depend on how much we have to share with private schools. We do know that it's approximately $139,000 that's been allocated to the Glendale-River Hills School District. We do have to share some of that. We just don't know how much with private schools in the area. That would be money that we would use for that I would recommend that we would use for the increase of sanitation, overtime for our custodial workers, those type of, if we need plexiglass between the desks or any of those type of things.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Larry, my question for you has to do with, and we talked about this before, about the impact of COVID-19. I'm just want to make sure that we are at least anticipating the possibility that we're going to have additional expenditures or something that we're not going to be able to deal with. I mean, I don't know if the bus company's going to come back and ask for, some kind of modification like they did before or not. But aside from that, there may be, additional things that we need to be flexible on, not just in terms of getting, equipment, but also services as well. And, I know it's a little bit too early and to think about those things, but, do we have, I guess, any leeway in this budget to address those things? Not just in terms of special education, but maybe, enhanced virtual education, supplies and health equipment, things of that nature. Are there any thoughts on what, burden we're going to have to face as a result of the pandemic this fall, regardless of whether or not we're, in person or virtual or some combination thereof?
So the quick answer is this budget has a significant increase to the fund balance, close to $300,000, because this is the first year of our 5-year referenda. And as past practice, the first couple of years, we want to put money into fund balance, knowing that at the end of the referenda, we'll probably be pulling money out of the fund balance. So yes, as a board, you have quite a bit of leeway. We have over $2 million in our fund balance. But remember, that's one-time money, and anything that we spend on it, that we're going to have to cut something somewhere a year or two from now to maintain that. So the quick answer is yes, we have a lot of leeway with the budget because there's enough in-house money to make changes this year, understanding that there's long-term effects for that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Okay, is there any other discussion? Seeing none, then Larry, the recommendation, we don't have to read out specially or not, it's just a recommendation that's in there that the board approved the budget presentation, and then you went through those numbers.
Yep.
So
I just did the overall numbers of 18 million. Do you want me to read each specific fund? Oh.
Yeah, probably a good idea just to rattle it off.
Okay. And Danielle, it is right in front of me. So our overall general fund, which is our regular ed students, regular ed staff, would be $15,651,454. Our special education fund is $3,312,040. Our debt service fund is $256,061. That's paying off referenda. Our food service fund of $508,000, and our community service fund of $619,285 with an interfund transfer, which means from the general fund to pay off the special education fund, because the revenue in special education is so low, that we would take from the general fund $2,173,518 to put into special education. So the overall budget is what I said before, $18,173,322. From a tax standpoint, the total is $13,550,556. Specifically, it's $12,727,780 to the general fund. We do not use tax money for special education funding other than the transfer in. Our debt service fund is $256,061, a tax chargeback levy of $2,000, and a community service fund of $564,755.
Okay, then with that, no further discussion. I will do a roll call vote. All of those in favor of the motion, please say aye as I call you. Danielle Bailey. Aye. Danielle?
Aye, sorry.
All right. Tamika Vukovic.
Aye.
Molly Krachowiak.
Aye.
And Andrew Franklin. Aye. The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. B is approve a administrator resignation. I'd like to congratulate Nassif Rogers for he has been offered and will be accepting a job with the Wauwatosa School District as their new Director of Equity. He's asked me to resign as of July 27th, and I would recommend that the board approve that resignation.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Larry, I just want to say, I mean, I think that we're happy, for Nassif to move on to something new. I'm just very concerned about the timing of this, given that we're going into fall and he's the principal. And so, if you could just offer a few thoughts on, how we're going to approach working this things through in fall. I think that would be a good idea just to kind of lay it out there about how we're going to proceed from this point if we accept his resignation for now.
Well, quickly, again, I think it's kudos to Nassif. He did not go out seeking a job. Wauwatosa called him and told him that he'd be an ideal candidate for the job. And after discussions, I think it's in his best interest and his family's best interest, and it's a promotion for him. What we would currently do is, it is July 15th. I think from an interim basis, we could as a board and with a recommendation probably within, for the August 5th meeting, I would come with you with an interim principal that we would hire and then have a full search for a principal either in the fall, or we might wait to the spring. We would have to figure that out as a board and as an administrative team. We have multiple candidates in-house who I do believe it's important that we would hire somebody internally for this. Nassif was only he'd been here with us for multiple times, but this was his first year as principal. So for our students here at Glen Hills, this will be their third principal in 3 years. So in my mind, it makes sense that we would hire internally somebody who knows the kids and the families, but I don't have specifics as of today.
As of today, if we accept his resignation, would it be effective as of today, or when would it be effective as of?
He's asking for July 27th.
So the board would end up giving a break on the notice requirement in his contract.
Yes, and that's my recommendation that we should accept that though.
Since you gave your opinion on what you thought should happen, I'm going to give my opinion on what I think we should do. Yes, we should have it in an interim principal, but I believe that we should also look outward as well as inward, and have open recruitment. I'm just gonna be honest, that suggestion that we keep it in when I know, like some of the, I personally have said that I would like to see it open. I want to make sure that everybody knows that at least I, not as the board, I'm only speaking of myself as a member of the board, would like to see that it open to everybody. And if the internal people do want to apply for the job, great. I love it. But I also believe that we should do this sooner than later to get somebody in place. Those are my opinions.
Anyone else? I'll just, follow it up with, in general, we have been trying to move towards, having a process that opens things up. I think that it's, we've discussed that, I should say, not moving towards the process. We have discussed our desire in various contexts to make sure that we get the best pool of candidates. Truthfully, if we had some more time between now and when Mr. Rogers needs to leave by, we might have a better ability to start that selection process and do it rather than, perhaps put someone in that we may or may not intend, to keep beyond that. But we're dealt the card that, we have. And, obviously, this happened for, Mr. Rogers. No one wants to hold him up. Obviously, we don't want to, do anything that's going to keep him, tethered here. I would only ask to the extent possible that as we do this in our search and as we deal with the transition, that we have some way of making sure that we can rope him in for his expertise to help us in that transition, in the interim. And I don't know if there's anything that we can do formally as a board except to, to offer a plea and say, please make sure that you're there for the benefit of the district, in this period. But I think we all wish you luck too.
And Nassif is a professional. He's going to help us as much as he can.
That's great. Okay. If there's nothing else, then we have a motion out here to accept Mr. Rogers' resignation unwillingly, but with much gratitude. So I'm going to go from left to right. And we have a motion on here. So I will ask if you agree to say aye. Going from left to right, Danielle Bailey.
Aye.
And then Tamika Vukovic.
Aye.
And Molly Krachowiak.
Hi, but I'm going to say one thing real quick that I've known Nassif for a long time. So to see him from where he's been to where he's going is great. The time is not exceptional for this to happen, but I'm looking forward to seeing Nassif in the paper doing great things moving forward.
Hear, hear. That's wonderful. And I also vote aye. Mr. Rogers, you've been, just a wonderful asset to the community. And honestly, you've made school better. And I know that we will miss you very greatly. So thank you for your service here and good luck in the future.
Thank you. Due to our retirement, I have a new teacher to bring in for speech and language here at Glen Hills. 18 people applied for the job. We interviewed 9, and it was the recommendation of the entire committee that the board approve a contract to Renee Sladek as our new speech language teacher here at Glen Hills for the 2020-2021 school year.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? I would just offer that I read through, Ms. Sladek is how you pronounce it?
Yep.
I read through, the material that you gave to us, and I think she's going to be a wonderful addition to the community. So with that said, I'll do a roll call vote from left to right. Danielle Bailey.
Aye.
Tamika Vukovic.
Aye.
And Molly Krachowiak.
Aye.
Okay, and Andrew Franklin votes aye, and the motion carries.
Okay, one last new business item, and that's to approve a teacher leave of absence. Ms. Carly Eisenberg is a special education interventionist. She is asked for a 1-year leave of absence. She has 2 small children at home and other family members who have autoimmune issues. So I'm recommending that the board approve a leave of absence for Carly Eisenberg for the 2020-2021 school year. And if you approve this, then we would start posting for her position as soon as tomorrow.
So I just have a question. When you say special ed interventionist, because that's terminology I'm not used to, is this an interventionist that provides like tier 2 and tier 3 interventions so kids can end up qualifying for special ed? Is that what that is? Or is she someone who gives intervention to special ed students?
The quick answer is both.
Oh, okay.
So,
And correct me, is she at Parkway or at Glen Hills?
last year she was a little bit of both, and she's a half-time position though. So this current for 2020-21 school year, she will be, or her position will be at Glen Hills Middle School.
So are we looking for a special ed teacher or a regular ed teacher?
Special ed teacher,
Okay.
hopefully with a reading background.
Got it.
At a half-time position, so we will see. But the special ed part is the most important part.
Okay.
Okay, then because we didn't actually get that motion first, I'm going to ask for the motion with respect to the recommendation.
Motion.
So moved.
Okay, great. Second.
Second.
All right, fine, Danielle. And any other discussion? All right, if not, then I'm going to do roll call vote. Danielle Bailey.
Aye.
And Tamika Vukovic.
Yes.
And Molly Krachowiak.
Aye.
And Andrew Franklin votes aye. Motion carries.
A few information items. First of all, by state law, the school board has to give a notice and approve student academic standards. I hate reading things to you verbatim, but the law mandates that I read this to you. It's not an approval, it's just that we have to post it on our website and we have to make it available to others. And so as of July 15th, 2020, I have to do this each year. The Glendale-River School District is committed to using benchmarked and rigorous standards that set high expectations for student performance and prepare students in the district for success in college and career development. As such, for math and English language arts, the school board is committed to supporting the Common Core state standards, which establish clear, consistent guidelines for what every student should know and be able to do in math and English language arts from kindergarten through, for us, 8th grade, but they go all the way through 12th grade. For all other subjects, the school board is committed to supporting the Wisconsin academic standards. Though we are in the process of aligning our science instruction, we are with the next generation science standards, but they've changed each year. So we will update our science standards also. The school board realizes the importance of community values and positioning students competitively for the global employment market. The board supports standards in various areas with the goal of setting high expectations that leverage students for success beyond high school. In setting standards for students in the Glendale-River School District, the board looks for the following characteristics: clarity and purpose and measurable outcomes at each grade level, collaborative teacher design of expected outcomes, and delivery of skills and content. Our focus on college, community, and workforce preparation, benchmarking with other schools across the country, especially in the North Shore area, and flexible and accessible learning so that all students can reach rigorous expectations. I read that somewhat tongue-in-cheek because to me it's an unfunded mandate, but we have to do it each year by state law, so I did my due diligence there. I also would like to update you on the Nicolay Partner Schools update. I'm not sure if everyone knows, but Mr. Tim Joint, who was the Shorewood curriculum person, has been hired as the new superintendent of Mapledale. Our North Shore area superintendents, Greg Cabara, Jeff DeLutri, previously Jen Wimmer, and now Tim Joint sat in last week already, even though he's not leaving until July 27th. As a matter of fact, it's his last day at Shorewood. We meet twice a week from the four of us, but we also meet with the entire North Shore from Port Washington all the way down to Shorewood to have common individual yet common restart scenarios. What I mean by that is we have to do what's best, and obviously a lot of communication tonight about how to restart schools. We know that some of our parents have kids in Glendale and at Nicolay, and so we have to be somewhat aligned. And so we are trying to align as best we can with the understanding that what's best in Glendale might not be what's best in Mapledale or Fox Point, but we're trying to be as consistent as we can. Jenica is also continuing to meet with our curriculum partners and the other to maintain common goals. And and the last one is busing. Our business managers have been meeting with Right Way multiple times over the last few weeks to be prepared to be also flexible in how we bus students to and from school, knowing that they're going to have to be flexible with us. And then last thing, I want to mention a great big kudos to Rosie Tays, who really helped push to get the summer lunch service. It resumed this morning, and we had 166 hot lunches go out today. Included in those 166 are actually 4 lunches per person. So we actually handed out, if you do 166 times 4 quickly, it's over 600 lunches that went out today to the community. And we'll be handing out lunches every Monday and Wednesday. And there will be 4 lunches per person in each packet going out. So huge kudos for Rosie to make that happen so quickly. And it started today. And for our community members, anyone under the age of 18, no questions asked. If you need lunches, please come to Glen Hills. For next week, it's 11 to 12:30. Following after Summer Academy is over, it will go from 10 until 11:30. The early start is because these are reheatable packets, so you can have a hot lunch at the appropriate time. With that, Mr. Franklin, I would tell you that it's time for adjournment because this is
I do have one announcement.
Thanks, Tamika.
I'm sorry, I know, because trust me, I'm tired, but anybody, I am doing a food giveaway for anybody who needs dairy or vegetables. It's at 5422 West Center Street. It's at Christ Praise Church of God in Christ. They are giving fruit, vegetables, dairy, and this is yogurt, cheese. There, it's family boxes. I know somebody may know people that are on this feed right now who really need the food. They're unemployed, or so I'm just giving that as a courtesy. I will be out there helping distribute the food. If you can't, or you just feel like you don't want to do it, if you text me or email me, I will bring you a box to your home. I'll just, just sometimes it's just the feel of embarrassment, but that's okay. I'll get it to you and you don't have to come and stand in the line. I'll just text me, email me. My number is 414-322-7247. You can just text me your address. You don't even have to tell me who you are and say, hey, I need some food. Please let me know. We have plenty of boxes. They told me I can take as many as I need for my district and my community. So please let me know.
Thanks, Tamika.
Tamika, can you say where it is again?
It's 5422 West Center Street. It's Greater Praise Church of God in Christ. They do this every Thursday from 12 noon to 3 p.m. And if you text me, email me, if you don't know, it's just great that we could give. This is a huge thing. It's through, some of this is Hunger Task Force food. It's a semi truck, and they really try to make sure that everybody gets some food if they need it. So please, if you know anybody, let's get out there and get the people who need it.
And Dr. Kilton just put the address into the chat box, and I will make sure that gets posted on our Q and answers.
Also, Tamika, they're asking for your contact info again. Can you give me your phone number and I'll type it in the chat?
It's 414-322-7247. School board, it's on the school board website or the City of Glendale website. Any text is, or you can email me and just say I need something, because I will be willing to get it to you.
Okay.
Before we adjourn, I have a follow-up or just a clarification point I want to make before we close.
Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're going to be sharing that PowerPoint from tonight. I know we'll get a copy, but I'm thinking about ways we can communicate more openly, perhaps through our website. I'm wondering if we can share that on our website. And I wanted to clarify if you're going to be answering the questions in the chat box or creating some kind of document that will be for the public, or are you planning on doing it sort of to the specific people who asked it? And I just want to say that I've also talked to you, Larry and Shannon, about perhaps creating some kind of like COVID link right on our homepage, sort of updating our website so that we have more of this information to our community, what our communications have been around COVID, any resources we could share, data. And I just want to say that I'm hearing and I've had this concern as well, is that we are pointing to metrics and data when we are making these decisions, and that we're letting our community know what specific data we're relying on in making decisions, and being transparent about that, and also being transparent about what risk we're willing to accept, acknowledging the risk that we're going to be taking with various proposals and plans, which I think goes along with the data and sort of what that sort of thing. So I just want to.
So my thought tonight is that I will go through each of the comments, do a question or frequently asked questions and answers, and then post that on our website. And if it's a specific question where an individual needs to be answered, I would also give them a call.
Okay. And we could pass those along to the working groups too, just so, right?
Danielle, this is Shannon. I also, because I'm reading the chat questions, there are a lot of common themes. So if some of the questions might just be like a grouped question about, sanitation and health concerns, whatever, how we're going to clean the buildings, that each individual question may not be posted, but the theme of the question, unless they're really specific, could be grouped together to just make the document user friendly.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. All right. Well, this is one of our longest meetings. And I really appreciate everyone who's come to the meeting again. Thank you for participating. And with that, we have a formal motion of adjournment. So I will do a quick roll call vote. All in favor? Danielle Bailey.
Aye.
Nick Lukovic. Molly Kuchoriak.
Aye.
And Andy Franklin, aye. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.